I'm excited to welcome you to my channel. Before I dive into my story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
It was a lazy Saturday morning when I received the message that would change the course of my week. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through social media, when I saw the post. An old friend, Jake, whom I hadn't seen in years, had just uploaded a picture of a massive fish, an absolute beast. The caption read, 300 kilograms monster, hand-pulled in the Cook Islands. My eyes widened in disbelief. Jake and I had grown up together in Texas, where we'd spent our childhood summers fishing in the Gulf. Life had taken us in different directions, Jake to exotic destinations, and me to a steady office job in Dallas. But the thrill of those old fishing days never left me. Seeing that post stirred something deep inside. Before I knew it, I was typing a message to Jake, "Man, that's insane. Congrats. Any chance you'd be up for some company on your next trip?" I hit send, not really expecting much, but within minutes, Jake replied, "You won't believe this, but I was just thinking about you. How about we meet up in Cabo next week? The marlin season is in full swing." The thought of leaving everything behind for an impromptu fishing adventure in Mexico was both exhilarating and terrifying. Work deadlines, responsibilities, all seemed to fade as I imagined the thrill of reeling in something massive. After a quick call to my boss, who surprisingly gave me the green light, I was booking a flight to Cabo San Lucas. Packing was quick. I grabbed my old fishing gear, hoping it would still hold up, and tossed in some clothes. I felt a rush of excitement I hadn't felt in years. This was going to be epic. Cabo San Lucas welcomed me with open arms. The sun was setting as I stepped off the plane, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The air was warm, with a salty breeze that smelled like adventure. Jake was already waiting for me at the small, bustling airport, his tanned face split by a wide grin. "Glad you could make it, man." Jake greeted me with a bear hug. "You're in for a treat. The marlin are biting like crazy, and I've got us a boat lined up for tomorrow." We spent the evening catching up over fresh ceviche and cold cervezas at a beachside bar. Jake regaled me with tales of his recent fishing exploits, everything from battling a giant tuna off the coast of Australia to getting dragged halfway across the ocean by a stubborn swordfish. The stories were wild, but I knew Jake well enough to trust every word. The next morning, we were up before dawn. The marina was alive with activity, boats rocking gently as fishermen prepared for the day ahead. Our vessel was a sleek, 30-foot beauty, equipped with everything we'd need for deep-sea fishing. The captain, a grizzled local named Diego, greeted us with a nod and a knowing smile. "Marlin are out there waiting," he said in his thick accent. "We'll find them." As we motored out of the harbor, the sun began to rise, casting golden light over the ocean. The water was calm, almost too calm, and I wondered if the fish would be biting today. But Jake was confident. "Trust me, there's something out there with your name on it." Hours passed with little more than the gentle rocking of the boat and the occasional cry of a seabird. I was beginning to think today might not be our day when suddenly, one of the reels started spinning wildly. Jake was on it in a flash, grabbing the rod and bracing himself. "It's a big one," he shouted, the excitement evident in his voice. I watched as he fought the fish, his muscles straining against the weight. After what felt like an eternity, he finally reeled it in, a marlin, gleaming silver and blue in the sunlight. It was impressive, but Jake's grin told me this was just the beginning. We continued to fish, and by midday, we'd already caught a couple more marlins. Each one put up a good fight, but nothing compared to the monster I'd seen in Jake's post. The sun was high, and the ocean around us was eerily calm. Diego muttered something about the weather changing, but we were too engrossed in our next catch to pay much attention. Then, out of nowhere, the wind picked up. The once still water began to churn, and dark clouds gathered on the horizon. "Storm's coming," Diego said, his voice serious. "We should head back." But just as he said that, the line on my rod went taut, nearly yanking it from my hands. I barely managed to grab hold, feeling the immense pull of something huge on the other end. "Hold on tight." Jake shouted as I struggled to keep the rod from slipping. The force was incredible, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Whatever was on the other end was big, really big. I planted my feet firmly on the deck and started reeling, but it was like trying to pull a truck. The fish on the line was fighting with everything it had, diving deep and then shooting up towards the surface, only to dive again. My arms were burning, and sweat was pouring down my face, but I couldn't give up. Jake and Diego were by my side, shouting encouragement and giving me tips on how to tire the beast out. But this fish was relentless, refusing to give an inch. As if the fight wasn't hard enough, the weather was quickly turning against us. The wind howled, and waves began crashing over the sides of the boat. Diego struggled to keep us steady, while Jake helped me brace myself against the surging water. It was chaos, but there was no way I was letting go. Minutes turned into hours, the storm raging all around us as I battled the fish. My hands were numb, my body aching, but the thrill of the fight kept me going. I had no idea what was on the other end of the line, but I knew it was something massive, something that would make this trip unforgettable. The storm was at its peak, the boat tossing like a toy in the waves, when I felt the fish begin to tire. Its movements were slower, less aggressive, and I knew this was my chance. With every ounce of strength I had left, I started reeling it in, inch by inch. Jake was beside me, eyes wide with excitement. "You're almost there, man. Don't let up now," he yelled over the roar of the wind. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I caught sight of it, a massive, dark shape beneath the water. It was a fish, all right, but this wasn't just any fish. This was a monster. With one last, desperate pull, the fish broke the surface, and all three of us gasped. It was enormous, easily twice the size of any marlin we'd caught that day. Its scales shimmered in the stormy light, and its massive tail slapped the water with a thunderous crash. Diego scrambled to help me secure the line, while Jake grabbed a gaff. It took all three of us to haul the beast onto the boat, and even then, it was a struggle. When we finally got it on board, we just stood there in awe, drenched and exhausted, but exhilarated. The storm had begun to die down, and as we stared at the massive fish lying on the deck, a sense of triumph washed over me. I had done it. I had caught my monster. The journey back to shore was a blur of adrenaline and exhaustion. The storm had passed, leaving the ocean calm once more. Diego expertly guided us back to the marina, where a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the sight of our massive catch. As we docked, people rushed over, cameras flashing, voices exclaiming in disbelief. The fish was weighed and measured, an astonishing 300 kilograms, just like Jake's Facebook post. It was a record for the season, maybe even for the year. That night, we celebrated. The locals treated us like heroes, buying us drinks and slapping us on the back. Jake and I recounted the day's adventure to anyone who would listen, each time the story growing a little more dramatic. As the night wore on, I found myself on the beach, staring out at the dark ocean. The thrill of the catch still buzzed in my veins, but there was something else too, a deep sense of satisfaction, of having faced a challenge and come out victorious. In the days that followed, Jake and I continued fishing, though nothing could top that first catch. We talked about life, about the twists and turns that had brought us to that moment. I realized how much I had missed the thrill of the unknown, the joy of testing my limits against nature. When it was time to leave, I packed my bags with a heavy heart but a light spirit. This trip had reminded me of who I was, of the passion that had been buried beneath the routine of everyday life. As I boarded the plane back to Dallas, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where adventure was always just a cast away. Back home, I couldn't wait to share my story. I gathered my friends and family, showing them the pictures and recounting every detail. They listened, captivated by the tale of the storm, the struggle, and the final victory. But what stuck with me the most was the bond one had rekindled with Jake. Our shared adventure had reminded us of the joy of friendship, the thrill of the chase, and the satisfaction of a hard-earned victory. We promised each other that this wouldn't be the last time we fished together. Weeks later, as I sat at my desk, I found myself daydreaming about the trip. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, a picture of me, Jake, and Diego, standing proudly beside our 300 kilograms monster. It was a reminder that life was full of unexpected adventures, and sometimes you just had to take the leap. That trip to Cabo had reignited my love for fishing and adventure. It wasn't just about the catch, it was about the journey, the camaraderie, and the thrill of the unknown. And as I stared at that photo, I knew one thing for sure: the next adventure was just around the corner, and I was ready to chase it down, rod in hand, just like old times.
This is where the story ends. Share your opinion in the comments. Did you like the story?